Here in Indiana, we're very encouraged by some of the early returns, and but I want to say right out of the gate, Chris, look, I don't think this is so much a victory for any political party this evening. I think it's a victory for the American people.
What do you expect to give the voters tonight for voting Republican in the first 100 days?
Carolina, Vermont, Virginia, we hope to be able to characterize many of the key Senate races in those states at that hour, not before. In the interim, let's go to Chuck Todd, who again is covering tonight's election by the numbers to look forward to two of those keys, the Indiana and Kentucky Senate closings at 7. Chuck?
Well, how you doing, Keith? Well, look, I'm going to show you here. We have a little bit. These are all the Senate races up. 37 of them, a ton this year, because there's a bunch of special elections for all those appointed senators, by the way, who got there because of jobs in the Obama administration. And we can go along here and show you the path to 10 if Republicans are going to figure it out. It starts with the first 4 that they believe they'll have in the bank, and that's Indiana, that's Arkansas. My apologies here for touching. That's North Dakota right here, and then there's Wisconsin. Wisconsin's one that Republicans and Democrats are feeling pessimistic, Republicans feeling optimistic. Then they have to, their next 3 would have to be Pennsylvania, Illinois, and Colorado. Those have all been very close races, but they would expect the wind at their back. The question is, that's 7. Where would they get the other 3?
Thanks, Chuck. Our first results of the night coming up at the top of the hour when the polls close in Kentucky and Indiana. And again, we mentioned Georgia, South Carolina, Vermont, Virginia. We're going to get as much business done out of the way so we can get you those results at the stroke of 7 o'clock, 7 minutes hence. Stand by. Eight seconds to 7 o'clock in the East. Polls closing as I speak in 5 states, and we're now ready for our first results in the Senate. We'll start with Kentucky. The Senate there, the race can be projected from the 7 p.m. poll closing. NBC News projects that Rand Paul, the ophthalmologist from Kentucky, is the projected winner for the Senate to replace the retiring Jim Bunning. In Vermont, no surprise there. As expected, the veteran Pat Leahy holds on to his seat in a state that went 68-31 for Obama last time, solid D remaining. In the Georgia Senate race between Mr. Isaacson, the Republican, and Mr. Thurmond, the Democrat, this is too early to call. That is an actual interpretation. That is language as opposed to suggesting it being too close to call, which is the other popular number. Too early to call, meaning we may have an idea of what's going on, but it's too early to say with any authority that it's going to hold that way. See the difference between leaning and we don't know. So here's what it looks like mathematically. If you just return to the country after 20 years, blue would be the Democrats and red would be the Republicans. That's, again, what's firmed up. The size of the Senate has not been reduced to just 67 members. We haven't gone back to 1913 or thereabouts. So there it is. The 2 big wins, Chris. Rand Paul.
Right. By the way, our sign on this Senate is from the back of the room.
Okay.
Looking forward to, you're used to the Democrats being on the right, looking from the front.
Right. Howard's reporting on how helpful McConnell was to Paul getting elected in Kentucky is vital to Paul being a senator. But Rand Paul has said today about McConnell, we will challenge him day to day. That means the Tea Party in the Senate will challenge the establishment Republican Party.
So is that money protection money? How would you term that?
Well, we're going to see what kind of a politician Rand Paul is. He's going to try to please the people who want him to challenge Mitch McConnell every day, and in the back room, whispering to Mitch McConnell, he's going to be saying, I'm really with you every day.
Well, you know, Keith, I think this is the first real shot over the bow at the Obama administration. This is going to put the Obama administration on the defensive early on in the next session of the Congress. I mean, if you have got Mitch McConnell telling Rand Paul that there's going to be an early vote on health care reform, now the president, we're going to find out just how much he loves this reform. And we're going to find out how much his base loves this reform. Because there's no way that the president's going to be able to fence this off in the Congress without the liberal base coming out saying, you know what, it's not the bill we wanted, but we're going to fight for this. So I think this is a very interesting development. And Rand Paul is up by, what, 10 percentage points in today's arena of close elections. He's going to run away with this thing. So I think this is a real message to the White House. Okay, you're going to either be on the offense or the defense. It's going to be interesting to see how the White House plays this. And I don't see how they're going to be able to defend their health care bill unless they get all Democrats on board.
I think it's important also to note what's just happened with Indiana. The Republicans have their first Senate pickup in Indiana. Evan Bayh, probably the only Democrat that could have held that Indiana Senate seat right now. Evan Bayh knew that resigned anyway, decided not to run again, held on to all his campaign money, and did not give any of that campaign money to any other Democrats in order for them to try to win their seats, and is now essentially reinventing himself as a pundit who talks smack about Democrats and how badly how bad they are as a party, and how that's seen in the seats that they lose, one of which he gave away.
State that is divided. About 90% of Democrats voted for him, about the same on the Republican side for Meg Whitton, and tremendous problems, the largest state deficit in the history of this country. Let's look at where we are right now. The projection right now is that, of course, as we've been saying all night, the Republicans taking over the House with 243 at this juncture. The Senate, not the same. The Democrats looking to hold on to the Senate. We have still, though, two outstanding races in Alaska and Colorado, and those could be nail-biters. Let's go to Chuck Todd for the very latest, who's been following this throughout the evening. Hi, Chuck.
Well, I want to start. How you doing, Chris? I want to start with the Senate because we've seen some startling turnout numbers, and this will explain to you why Democrats lost a couple of key Senate races. You know, Pennsylvania, Missouri, and Ohio Senate were all big races in 2006. Look at the overall turnout in Pennsylvania from 2006, over 4 million, to 3.8 million in 2010, a missing 126,000 voters. Let me go to Missouri Senate. In 2006, 2.1 million. In 2010, 1.8, a 273,000 vote difference to the negative there as far as turnout's concerned. And then Ohio. It was 3.8 was the turnout when Sherrod Brown won, the Democrat. 2010, 3.4 when Rob Portman wins, almost a 330,000 vote margin. That tells you is that there were some seriously missing voters here. We go over to Virginia's 9th district. Rick Boucher, elected in 1982. He lost tonight. And so it was just one of those nights for Democrats. Overall, Chris, 54 so far net seats that Republicans have had. 56 Democratic seats have been lost. 49 of those 56 seats are incumbents who lost tonight. 49 incumbents. It's stunning, and it really tells you, I can tell you this, this was a referendum in these House races very much on Nancy Pelosi. When you look at how these races were fought, she was the primary person that they beat up on, Republicans beat up on, demonized, more so than Barack Obama. And how do you know this? Just look at what we're seeing in the Senate. Democrats are surviving. They're hanging in there. They didn't come anywhere near that on the House side tonight.
All right, fascinating stuff. Thank you so much, Chuck, who has been doing this all night long for us. We talked about that Alaska race. Unbelievable. Three-way race, not decided. It is one of the wildest in the country. Let me lay it out for you. If the Tea Party favorite, Joe Miller, wins, it could also be read as a big win for Sarah Palin. If the independent, Lisa Murkowski, wins, it would be the first time since 1954 that a writing candidate has won a seat in the U.S. Senate. If Scott McAdam pulls it out, it will be a comeback of major proportions and take a seat that's been held by a Republican. That and Colorado, two of the hot races we're watching right now. Let's bring our panel in. Would you agree with that, Alicia? This was not just about the economy and jobs?
I do agree with that assessment. I also think there's sort of an interesting headline that could get buried. I think there are two, actually. One is that this is the first time since World War II that the House has flipped and the Senate has not. So the fact that Democrats have retained control of the Senate is historically a huge deal. Second thing, Harry Reid won because Latino voters turned out and voted for him. And what we learned from this race is that when you demonize Latino voters, when you go after them the way Sharon Engel did, there will be a price to pay.